You're listening to the Infinite Banking Mastery Podcast. Did you know that you could build a tax-free pool of wealth that's liquid and accessible all your life while building your retirement nest egg? Gain full control of your financial future and stop relying on the government and banks. The wealthy have already discovered this wealth-building secret. Now it's your turn to get financially secure without following the conventional wisdom that keeps you in debt to banks. Now here's your host, Valerie LaRoque.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Question of the day, should I cover my non-working spouse? So let me just clarify first that by saying non-working, I certainly don't mean non-working. I should say non-income producing, because for those of you who have kids at home, families you take care of, we all know that being home is way more work than going to work. So it certainly is a lot of work. When I first had my children, I told my husband, you know what? I need to go back to work so I can have a break because this is real work, all day, never ending. So a lot of people that I talk to who are beginning IBC policies for themselves or simply need life insurance don't think they need or should have coverage on their non-income producing spouse or even on a spouse that earns less income. Well, actually, it's a very good idea to cover your non-working or non-income producing spouse, especially if you have children that the stay-at-home spouse is caring for. I think that the tasks of a stay-at-home spouse that they're responsible for every day, they easily get overlooked. So if we just take a look at a traditional example of a working husband and a stay-at-home wife, which I know is not always the case. I know it can be vice versa. Sometimes men are home caregiving and all of that. I just wanted to make it easier to talk through this example. So if the husband's at work and the wife is home and this married couple has children, then there is a lot of things mom takes care of in a day. She's getting the children up and ready for school or up for the day, preparing breakfast and lunches. She's driving them to wherever they need to go for the day to school or walking them to the bus. Most likely she's doing the grocery shopping and preparing the meals and the food for the family. She might be taking care of the bills, taking care of what needs to be done in the home, like cleaning and all the laundry. She's probably running around doing regular errands and picking up household needs, maybe picking up the kids from school or picking them up from the bus or being there when they get home and having that snack ready for them. And if the two of you have a newborn, well, just forget it. There would be a whole new level of tasks to add to this list, and not to mention a severe lack of sleep. With all the things that stay-at-home spouse may be doing, it always amazes me when there's no value placed on that person, when they don't think that there's a value to that monetary value. Like, I'll be fine if something happens to my spouse, when in fact that homemaker is very important and the things that she does during the day. She is ultimately getting the household, making the household run smoothly so that it feels more smooth to the worker and that person can just come and go to work. The working person or the husband in this example doesn't feel overwhelmed by all the tasks that need to get done during the day because their wife is taking care of it all. The stay-at-home spouse is making it run smoothly. Now, I wanted to paint this picture in this way just so that you could see more clearly that if you have a spouse at home taking care of everything, all the household tasks and meals and things like that, life would suddenly become very difficult if you lost this person, and it would become more expensive. If you lost that homemaker in your house, you very likely would need to hire someone to help watch your kids while you're working, or maybe help get them off to school and then also be there at the end of the day. What about sports practices and games? You're going to need help with that. Maybe you have carpool buddies, or maybe you need someone to take your child back and forth to games and to practices. Now, if you're lucky, you might have your family close by. Mine happened to be kitty corner to me. It's been very amazing, actually. But you might have family to help you out. But in all situations, it may be a burden to the family as a whole to now have to help take the children around and do all the things that need to happen. You're going to have to be in charge of meals now. And if this is not something you do very often, Trust me, that alone is a full time job. Because of this, you may end up hiring this out or finding a chef or a company that will ship you food so that you don't have to be cooking all the time. You may start ordering more takeout or going out to eat more often. You will likely want to hire a housekeeper, someone to clean your house on a regular basis once a week or twice a month. Well, all of these things cost money, and these are all things that maybe you don't think about as the working spouse because they're just taken care of, and it's something that your stay at home spouse just does. In addition, if you just lost the love of your life, your spouse, your partner, you likely would like to have some time to mourn, to be home with the kids, to be able to mourn as long as you need before having to rush back to work to be able to pay the bills. So having life insurance on your non-income producing spouse will allow you to take the time you need to mourn after his or her passing. It will also allow you to take on any extra costs to get help with the things that your spouse used to do. Now, I know this is all very depressing. It is a depressing topic, and that's actually part of the problem as well, because people don't ever want to have to talk about this or think about this possibility ever. Nobody wants to talk about dying. They don't even want to think that their spouse could possibly pass away before old age, or themselves, or anyone else they love for that matter. No one wants to think about death, of course, because that is a depressing topic. But it's also absolutely guaranteed to happen. Therefore, it's best to prepare and cover that risk. And the good news is that you can cover that risk with the absolutely amazing product of whole life insurance. And then you can direct your focus to all of the wonderful living benefits of life insurance. And we don't have to focus on the sad or the tragic or the depressing thought of actually dying, but instead we can focus on the exciting living benefits, and the death benefit becomes more of a side effect. However, while we're putting that whole life in place and getting excited about all the awesome living benefits, it's important to make sure you're protecting your full life insurance need. Whether or not you're bringing in income or you're a stay at home spouse, you do have a human life value, and it's important to cover that full potential or close to it so that in the event of your passing, even if you're not bringing in that income, that your family will be okay and that your spouse will be able to get help with the things that you used to do in the home. So I wanted to point out that it's important to consider the full amount of coverage that you actually would need to care for your family in the event of your passing. Because when we are building for the infinite banking concept, we are squeezing down the death benefit on purpose to help your cash operate and grow more efficiently so that you can have that pool of cash to finance things you want to buy or purchase or invest in. And so we're shrinking down that death benefit on purpose. And so that may make the death benefit too low for your family's need in the event of your passing. So it's important to figure out how much death benefit you would need for you or your spouse, non-working, or and the working spouse as well, and make sure we cover for an appropriate amount, not get too focused only on all the awesome and fun excitement of IBC and then shrinking down the death benefit and then not having enough death benefit, because certainly tragedy still strikes, things still happen, people get sick unexpectedly, accidents, you just never know what could happen. And so it's important to make sure you're covered well, that you're covered fully. To do so, we would just acquire term insurance to tack on to your whole life so that you have enough coverage. And then you also have that term period now to convert into whole life and turn some of that term insurance that's just going to be there for a short period of time at that price and create it and turn it into a product that's guaranteed for the rest of your life. So getting that term coverage bumps up your total coverage to protect your family better, but it also is convertible in that term time period throughout your life so that you can grow your banking system when you're ready. And when you have the funds and the resources, you're able to grow that banking system using that term that you may have just put on there or received or purchased or moved forward with just to get your total death benefit higher for protection, but that in the long run, it may end up being even more amazing because now you can convert that and grow your banking system and lock in that insurance till you're 121 years old. So now for sure, it's going to pay a death benefit at some point in your life. And if I'm talking with you or you and your spouse and you really just have a whole plan, or you've decided that you really just want to put all of the whole life coverage on the working spouse for now, I still think it's a good idea to at least do a term policy on the non working or non income producing spouse so that, again, there's that coverage during that time period while you're growing, while you're building your system. And then when you're ready to grow your system, you might grow it by converting some of that term insurance on your spouse and then growing your banking system that way by getting a second policy on your spouse. There's no underwriting, it's just very easy to turn that into a whole life policy. And of course, you could grow the coverage on yourself. You could also acquire a term and easily convert, or you could simply go through underwriting again and just hope that your health is as good as it was before. Oftentimes, I will say our health is better when we're younger. And so, when you're underwriting, if you're okay with adding on a term policy, it's a good idea. But if you're just against it, you don't want to do it, it's not in your budget, or for whatever reason, you can go through underwriting later and your rating may change, but that's just the risk that you would be willing to go forward with. But then, yes, so you would be able to grow your system with your spouse's policy or your own term or go through. So, in summary, if your spouse is not working or not producing income, or they make less than you, it's still very important to get coverage on that person to help you with the things that that person used to do. And if your income is high enough that you are completely unconcerned about losing your spouse's income or their household contribution, then you should definitely have a whole life policy on that person to be able to maximize your infinite banking plan, your infinite banking system to the fullest. I will just say, add on a bit about the non income producing spouse or the person earning less. Having coverage on that person could help with other things. Maybe they'd like to leave a legacy for their children to easily be able to go to college or choose whatever college they want to go to, if that's something that the kids have as a goal in the family. Or maybe they end up not going to college, or maybe they would also be able to use some of those funds as a down payment on a house. That death benefit could also come in handy to the surviving spouse for their retirement years. They could use that money and invest it and just have more retirement resources. Maybe that person is already, maybe the worker is already contributing the max to their retirement plans or already has a lot of investments and thinks, I'm okay. But you never know. The market could have a big fat crash or something right before you need it, right before you're retiring. And it certainly couldn't hurt to have had those death benefit dollars working for you during that time or however long it's been since that person passed away. Or it certainly couldn't hurt, is all I'm saying. And it could be there for your retirement years, or if you have a long term care need, those funds couldn't hurt. Obviously, we have inflation to think about as well. So it could only help the long term situation. And another thing I almost forgot to mention is if your spouse passed away and they had had costly medical care for their sickness or injury, that death benefit could help to cover or pay off high medical bills. That's something you don't want to take with you. You don't want that as a reminder that you're having to pay off all these bills. Even though you may have insurance, you may still have a high cost if it was very expensive. I had a friend who was very sick. She did pass away at age 45, and I remember her saying that her medication was $100,000 a month. I don't know how much of that she was paying, but I know it's very expensive. So that death benefit could come in handy for that as well. Well, I hope this was helpful information to some of you or all of you. I certainly do have this conversation a lot with people who are like, well, I wasn't planning on covering my spouse, or I'm just getting the coverage on me, and he or she doesn't need the coverage. And so I wanted to do a podcast on just the importance of covering both spouses, whether you focus the whole life on one or not. It's still, I think, important to cover both spouses, especially if you have children. So if you're feeling ready to move forward in this infinite banking journey that you've been on, or you're just ready to get some coverage on you, your family, and you'd like to partner with me as your advisor, please reach out. You can reach me at Valerie@alphaomegawealth.com. Thanks so much for listening. As I record this, my kids have just started school, so I'm exhausted. I don't know about them, but I hope that you're doing well, that you had a great week. Fall is certainly my favorite season, so I hope everyone is enjoying, and I will talk at you again next week. Thanks so much. Take care.
This is the podcastfactory.com.